Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this month's episode of the Pirates Plunder Picks for April of 2021. So, a lot of movement has happened in the marketplace over the last few weeks or months, especially with the stimulus checks and tax returns coming in. Man, has there been some money poured into Magic the Gathering. So we are seeing some unprecedented prices in recent booster boxes, and we are starting to see a little bit of supply issues with some of the sets that supposedly are still in their standard print run. Now, there have been some sets in the not so recent years that didn't get their second printing and did go out of stock during their print run. One of them was Rivals of Ixalan, I believe, was one that was hard to get at distributor prices right when it rotated, or right before it rotated, around the same time period that we are at with the current standard sets that are rotating. So nothing too snazzy this episode of the Pirates Plunder. I'm just going to give the duds that I think are great investments because the price point is still quite low for these booster boxes. There's one that I'm going to pick that has rotated, and I'm going to try to justify my picks with some market data here. So if we head over to Donglair, you can see that the standard sets are doing quite well. We have Throne of Eldraine at $94.16. We have Theros Beyond Death at $127.47. This is using TCG market price. This is using mid. And we have Ikoria at $100. So these were all stinkers when they came out of the printers. These were very similar to Zendikar Rising with prices that were down in the 50s, 60s. And this was the big unknown. How are Collector's Edition going to affect the long term of these sets? Well, I think that Magic has just had enormous sales, and this hobby industries in general, with the lockdowns and with the nostalgia setting in, a lot of people did turn to hobbies and pour a lot of that stimulus money into them. And the newer sets seem to have been targeted as much or more than some of these older sets. Now, of course, we can go back to like things that have been bought out recently, like Core Set 2020 and whatnot. But these sets are actually faring very well, comparatively speaking, to their predecessors. And this is without any standard play happening. This is really Commander that has been driving these prices up. So for this month, I think that you should just stick to the known here. We do know that these are ending they're ending their life cycle. The other sets that have recently rotated have already gone up in value, and I'm assuming that within a year we're going to see the same price increases that we saw with these sets that we could have seen with things like Core 2020 or War of the Spark, Ravnica Allegiance, and Guilds of Ravnica. So anyway, let's just get into the 5 products that I like this month, and we'll talk about some of the pricings with the sets. So the first one is Ravnica Allegiance. Ravnica Allegiance continues to go up. Its price point doesn't reflect how much it's worth. I say that if the booster box value of a particular set is below 85% of the what it takes to actually buy it. So say that a booster box is $100 and there's $85 worth of cards on TCG market price. I typically think those are good buys. Now, there are some exceptions there when they go up even further in value, like Core Set 2020. I still believe that this EV is off. This has a lot of cards that are contained in like the intro decks and the welcome decks and the theme decks and whatnot that you can't get from booster packs. But some of these other sets here, most of the value, we don't see some of those crazy $4 commons that you see in Core Set 2020. So many of these sets are right at that price point of where I think that they're very good. If they're above that 85% margins, I think they're great buys. So the first one is Ravnica Allegiance. So this actually has gone up $10 in the last week. And so I'm expecting that it's going to continue to follow that trend as the supply starts to dwindle. There's only one distributor I can get this from anymore. They were 105 last week. They're now 115 this week, and the EV is there. It's about $112 for the EV. You can even see within the last week it's gone up, or at least in the last month, it's gone up from 93 to 112. So we've had about a $20 price increase in the EV. If we actually check out Ravnica Allegiance, there are a lot of goodies here. This is what you want to see from a set, is when the high value cards are all going to be in the rare slot. So there's only one mythic that's really going towards this EV. It's all the Smothering Ties, and we can see that Commander is really still being the breadwinner for these sets. There was some great Commander additions in these latest sets, like the Smothering Ties. The Shocklands are doing well. Guardian Project is another Commander card that have just gone through the roof. And this is exactly where you want to be in a particular set when you have a mana base that I'd like to say with Pioneer, if we do get organized playback and Pioneer sees as much play as Modern, that the shocks become the new fetches. In fact, they might be a little bit more valued than the fetch lands. I know Commander actually wants more fetch lands as it is, but I mean with Pioneer wanting 4-ofs of the, and not having access to the fetch lands, and oftentimes wanting 4-ofs, and Modern still wanting 1-ofs, there's going to be a lot of demand for the shock lands. And I don't see us coming back to Ravnica anytime soon, so I'm thinking that shock lands are going to, Wizards is going to start milking these as far as letting them increase in value, and then release them in like secret layers and stuff like that, so they can just, you know, milk that sweet equity they get from this mana base. I think they've done fetch lands about all they can. I'm actually very surprised that fetch lands are able to hold their value with the amount of Zendikar Rising collector's editions that were printed, and the secret layer ultimate editions that were printed. But I think the shocks are going to follow those trends too. If we actually click on some of these things like Blood Crypt, they have been going up very, very quickly. At the start of March, $15. We're almost up to $25. This was actually very interesting that it's Blood Crypt that's seeing the most amount of play, or most money. Usually it is the Breeding Pool that does see, but Breeding Pool hasn't gone up as quickly. I do think the Breeding Pool will outpace Blood Crypt in the long term, though. So I am liking Ravnica Allegiance. Is one of the last sets that didn't have a collector's edition. There was a lot of supply from like the promo packs and things like that, but it is aging well. It's above and beyond my expectations for a booster box. I guess this is the new norm, that right after rotation, these both the EV and the box prices can go up, you know, substantially. We used to have to wait many years before they would crack above distributor price, let alone, you know, above that 100, 110, 115. So I'm liking that Ravnica Allegiance as a set to invest in, or at least to get some sealed booster boxes. I think it's going to continue to go up like $5-10 a month, and I don't know how much supply is left in distributors, but it's definitely a lot lower than it was a month ago or 2 months ago, which is a good sign for the set going forward. All right, on to the next one. I've talked about Throne of Eldraine quite a bit. This is crazy. This is now a 2 challenger decks that focused mainly on Throne cards, but the EV is still there. Great Henge Mist getting reprinted here. We have cards that were printed like Brazen Borrower that continue to go up. Oko is actually doing quite well, even though it is banned in most formats. We have even things like the Rankle, Master Beast, and Questing Beasts that are holding quite well, but you can see these rare slots are starting to really gain value, like Castle Garenbrig. This is what's kind of weird about Throne, though. It just is packed in with value within many of these cards in the $1 to $2 range. Many of these have been reprinted in the Challenger decks, and it had Brawl decks, it had a bunch of stuff here that did have reprints, but you can see that these prices are, I mean, all the cards that were contained in Throne are just powerhouses. There are many, many cards out of Throne that are played in various formats and will continue to be played in various formats. There's a lot of Commander goodies in here that I think are going to age well and continue to go up. And I just like the set overall. I think it's going to be one of those sets that people are going to continue to crack long term because of just the sheer amount of value that, or just power level that this set had in it. I think that we are seeing a power reset from the Throne of Eldraine. And so typically it's those sets that had the high power levels, like the original Zendikar, Innistrad, and Scars Mirrodin. People forget we had a power reset within Return to Ravnica and then Theros from the sheer power level like Innistrad and whatnot. So this was another kind of the climax of the power, and I think that these are going to be in 5 to 10 years. The Throne boxes could be something that just has max nostalgia, or just people really wanting because of the powerful cards with adventures and whatnot in the set. So I think that there still is decent supply. I have noticed that a couple distributors have increased the price of Throne of Eldraine. My main distributor still has it at the regular $84 or $85 booster box price. So I think that it's going to be, I'd start to move into these sooner rather than later. Next up, of course, is just Core 2021. It's another one that had less collector's editions than something like Throne or Zendikar. So it has less supply out there. It was a core set. It was pretty lackluster when it first came out. People forgot about it. It does have some goodies in it, though. As you can see with the Mythic slot, there's a lot of cards that were reprinted, like Ugin the Spirit Dragon, that's actually recovered quite well. Terror of the Peaks and Fire Emancipation are pretty good cards with casual players as well as competitive players. Fire Emancipation is played in Commander. Same thing with the Chromatic Ori. So this Mythic slot is pretty good. We have some rare slots with like Heroic Intervention that are going to age well. Azusa is probably going to start going back up. We even have cards that are out of the Arena decks that are still worth $4.54, and just a lot of cards within this range that I think are going to do well long term, even some uncommons like the Conclave Mentor. So it's very, very hard to find Collector's Edition, but look at this price value that's gone up with the main set cards within the past month. You can still get these at the distributor cost of $84. Not much to say about this set. I think core sets have they have some things going for them and other things not going for them. The first thing that they have going for them is they do usually contain some known reprints that age very, very well. They get reprinted, they recover, and so on and so forth. So Ugin from this particular set and a few other reprints like Grim Tutor, I think are going to not be reprinted for a while, and you can safely assume that they're going to continue to go up in value with how much they see play in various formats. All right, so next up, we're getting into the good stuff. Who would have thought that Ikoria would be a set that is investable? This was such a stinker when it came out, and a lot of people were trying to compare it to this previous sets like Ravnica Allegiance, War of the Spark, and so on and so forth. This is just a really good card when you get down into the nitty-gritty of the set. You have the Triomes that are aging very well. They're just auto-includes in Commander decks. They're being able to be fetched up makes them even that much better in Commander cycling, and being fetchable is just exactly where you want to be in 3 or 4 or 5 color decks, and so they're going to go in every Commander deck going forward. There are a lot of these supply going around, and you can still see that the price of these have gone through the roof just since December at their bottom. Let's see at their bottom. They bottomed at $7, so this is doubled up within their standard season. Yes, this is the one that's seen the most play in standard, which is crazy because there isn't any tournaments and whatnot, but you can actually see that Paper Magic is being played. Even the competitive cards are starting to go up. So I like the Triomes. Even cards like Lurrus have started to go up. Ozolith, all these rare slots here within that $10 range. That's exactly what you want to see from a set. And there are even some goodies if you keep going down, like the Sprite Dragon. This card is seeing a lot of play in Modern. So if it doesn't get a reprint, this could be a card that could potentially see quite a bit of value as the supply keeps getting stretched from Ikoria and people continue to build it in Modern. But again, this is what you want to see with the set. A lot of cards within the $5 and above range, and Ikoria I think is going to be a great set going forward. I particularly do like just the booster boxes. If you can still get in a collector edition, that's pretty decent as well. And last but definitely not least, this set surprised me is just Theros. I overlooked the amount of just casual cards that are in Theros. I thought that this was going to be a stinker set because not 1, not 2, not 3, but all 4 of the main cards have been reprinted. I guess Nyx Bloom has, but these top 3, the Kroxa, Heliod, and Uro have been in Secret Lairs. I guess that just shows that Secret Lairs actually don't affect the prices that much of sets. And we have Kroxa just replacing Uro as the premier mythic in this set. I like the collector's editions. You can still get collector's editions at I think at $180 and booster boxes at $85. And I mean even Uro stabilizing, Heliod stabilizing after its reprint. You have Nyx Bloom Ancient. This is a very, very popular commander. And they have the Dryad of Elysian Grove that's just a powerhouse in Commander. Commander players like to play extra cards. Thassa's aging well. Thassa's Oracle is aging well. Shadow Spear even. And there's a lot of cards in this slot, like we said, around that $4 to $5 range that I think are going to age well long term. We have cards I think like Idyllic Tutor that should recover long term. This should be a card that should go back up in value because it's another tutor and commander that people like to play. Pretty decent commander or tutor for white to go get an enchantment card and put into your hand. And it did have a pretty high price tag before it was reprinted in the Theros Beyond Death. So those are the ones that I really like. There are also things like Guilds of Ravnica that are still pretty good. But as far as the 5 sets that when people aren't watching, when people are salivating over Modern Horizons 2 or Strixhaven or the billion other products that are coming out, these things tend to sneak in there. And this is the time that I like to start picking up boxes. Like if you were picking up boxes with Theros and Ikoria for the last year and a half, that was the wrong time. You want to wait to the very last minute because you want your money working for you until it's the last time to actually pull the trigger. So I'm thinking that now is going to be that time. I wouldn't wait much longer because we don't know if they are going to get another reprint. And like I said, a bunch of these distributors are out of, like I saw Ikoria was increased in price. It was out of stock on one of the other distributors. A lot of these distributors, if people are using some of the secondary ones, I'm not going to name names here, but they don't have a lot of inventory like they used to. Like we used to be pretty, you could rely on having booster boxes that were in print with these distributors for their entire livelihood. But there's like three of the distributors, 3 out of the 5 of them that are out of many of these sets that are supposedly still in their standard print run. So for what it's worth, I think that if you are wanting to get on these cheap prices, now's the time to pull the trigger. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are interested in getting in on these prices, you can definitely go and check out my Patreon at patreon.com/roguedeckbuilder. We have the companion piece on the Gone Rogue Games channel, which looks at 5 products that I think are great buys right now, ones that I dislike. So if you're into kind of product accessories or board games, we do have that kind of the companionship piece to that on our other channel at Gone Rogue Games. Anyway, this has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.